moves in my heart, I'm gonna sing till the Spirit moves in my heart.
To be prepared. Most of us will not be, but we need to get prepared. All those that have an ear, let them hear. Because he's coming back to do some serious destroying. We read in Genesis the 49th chapter where it talks about his eyes were red like wine and his teeth white with milk. We read in Revelation of how it talks about how the blood was up to the horse's bridle. He is making war with mankind. He is making war with mankind. So it says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh cruel, but with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. That's not a coincidence where it talks about how they say, the men of there say, that for the rocks to follow them and hide them from the wrath of the Lamb. That's because he's not a lamb anymore. He's not coming in that kind of nature. He's coming in the nature of one that conquers. As a king would conquer, he comes destroying. So we're talking, but we want to make sure that we're talking about the second coming of Jesus. It says, for the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause a light to shine. We know that's the sign of the second coming of Jesus, brothers and sisters. We see that in the book of Habakkuk. We see it in Joel. We see it in Matthew. We see it in Mark. We see it in Isaiah. We see it in Revelation. We see it in all what the prophets wrote. He says, for the stars of heaven and the constellation thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in its going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. He says, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Now, we don't even know where the golden wedge of Ophir is. That's how precious man is going to be. Now, when you think about that, you have to understand there are over 6 billion people on the planet today. How much killing does the Lord have to do? This is a question. How much killing does the Lord have to do to make a man more precious than the golden wedge of Ophir? Answer, a lot of killing. It's quite simple. It says, therefore I will shake the heavens and the earth shall remove out of her place. It says in another place the earth is going to reel to and fro like a drunkard. And it says, and the earth shall remove out of her place, and in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. And it shall be as the chase roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. All right, brothers and sisters, now this is the same thing we just read in Leviticus the 25th chapter, verses 1 through 13. We read towards the end of that, we read how people are going to go back to their own land. And it's going to be freedom at this time. It's going to be a trumpet sound, and the Lord's going to gather his people in particular. See, we have been in bondage, even after our last dispersion from Israel occurred in 70 AD. We haven't been back since. And other people have moved into the land, have taken our name, claimed to be the chosen people of God. When you read scripture, you understand that you read in Deuteronomy the 28th chapter. You read about the curses and blessings that were supposed to befall Israel. They fit the so-called African American today. They fit the so-called Afro-Brazilian today. They fit the so-called Haitian and the so-called blacks that are scattered throughout the Caribbean, scattered throughout all the nations of the earth. You was going to go into Egypt or the house of bondage by way of ships. And there you will be sold by bondwomen, as bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you or no man shall redeem you. That was to be our lot for disobedience. It says, but at this time, Matthew 24 says, and 29 reads, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. We just read that in Isaiah the 13th chapter. Verse 30 reads, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. They are mourning because he's coming back in wrath. Again, eyes red like fire, teeth white like milk. Righteous indignation. That's why I read in Revelation the 19th chapter, it talks about how he calls the beasts of the field, the fowls of the heavens to come to the supper of the great God. Habakkuk said, Lord, his belly trembled, rottenness entered in his bones. When he understood what the Lord was going to do, he said, in wrath, remember mercy. He said, in wrath, remember mercy. Verse 31, and he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven even to the other. So he's going to gather his. It's going to be liberty for them. See, in this destitute state that we are in right now, I know we have our Oprahs and we have our Tiger Woods, we have our Michael Jordans, but for the most part, black people in this country in particular have been suffering. Our suffering today have been suffering and are going to be suffering tomorrow. Again, mental slaves. Mental slaves. Still enslaved because we have not received what was due to us. Built a country, did not benefit one iota. Could care less what anybody has to say about it. Look at what's going on in Brazil with the sons and daughters of slaves. Same condition. You look at Haiti, you know the same condition. Even when we say that they are the first black republic in the Western Hemisphere to be free, are they really free? Are they truly free economically? Are they truly free? No. Since that time, they have been exploited and taken advantage of. You have people that, and even after this earthquake, before this earthquake, people were eating dirt. Terrible destitution. All right? So, you look at where we've been scattered, we are all over in bondage, in the same condition. But he says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. Like we said, we read about that trumpet of Jubilee, in that day of atonement, in that year of Pentecost. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds of heaven, from one end of the earth to the other. Let's go to Isaiah the 27th chapter. Isaiah the 27th chapter, and the 12th verse. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall beat off from the channel of the river unto the stream of Egypt, and ye shall be gathered one by one, O ye children of Israel. Again, everybody's going home. Verse 13, and it shall come to pass in that day that the great trumpet shall be blown. Again, we read about that trumpet. You can read about it in Leviticus, the 25th chapter, the 9th verse, in Matthew, the 24th chapter, and the 31st verse. And it shall come to pass in that day that the great trumpet shall be blown. And they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria. Not literally that they come from the land of Assyria, but that those that were in the land of Assyria, that were ready to perish. Who? That was us, Israel. 722 BC went into slavery, which were ready to perish in the land of Syria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt. We were once in the land of Egypt, and we were in bondage there. And shall worship the Lord in the holy mount at Jerusalem. Let's go to 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, because again, we read at this trumpet being blown, we read about liberty to the captives. That's what Leviticus, the 25th chapter said. Then we read in Isaiah, we read in Matthew about how, hey, his are going to be gathered because everybody's going home. Well, we going to Israel. He's going to gather us and bring us into our own land. And everybody else is going to wherever they came from. So that's what's happening at that sound of that trumpet. But something else, again, as we stated earlier, is happening at that trumpet. That's at the time the trumpet is going to be blown. It's going to be the first resurrection. Scripture talks about too. The first resurrection at his coming in is going to be after 1,000 years of peace. You're going to have a great white throne judgment. You are going to, whoever was dead didn't come up in the first resurrection. And whoever was already dead, they're going to be judged at that time. That's the second resurrection. Matter of fact, before I read this, I want to read that to you. I want to read that to you because that might sound like a foreign concept to some people. That might sound like a foreign concept to some people because people are not being taught the truth. They are being taught that as soon as you die, you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. First of all, the lake of fire or hell fire has not even been established yet. And if you look at people look down as if they can go to hell by digging or something. Look, if you go down, you're going to hit the earth's core. There's nothing down there but some dirt, okay? The lake of fire is going to be established on the earth, and it is not established until this day. It was prepared for Satan and his angels. The first one that's going to go in it is going to be the abomination of desolation, that Antichrist and the beast. All right? Then Satan and his angels, who was prepared for, going to go in, and man who were disobedient to God or seen unfit or unworthy are going to partake in that. Revelation, the 20th chapter.